Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nedling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I am your host, Vicki Nedling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of our podcast is to empower our guests by sharing topics and guests that will make sure that you know how to become a confident leader and take your business to the next level. Today, my guest is Bryan Gillette. Wait till you hear his story. Bryan is a former Silicon Valley human resource executive, founder of his own leadership consulting business, an amateur ultra endurance athlete. He has ridden his bike across the United States and run 205 miles around Lake Tahoe. Bryan knows how to connect with both business leaders and amateur athletes to help them reach their peak and achieve the impossible. The skills and behavior, as he learned, are the same. After interviewing 100 leaders on how they reach their peak, and from his experience in both roles, he wrote the epic performance lessons from 100 executives and endurance athletes on reaching your peak. In his speaking engagements and podcast interviews like this, he talks about the key aspects to push oneself and one's team further. Today, I've selected our theme as leadership powered by common sense, which we know, having anyone that's worked in the corporate world for any time at all, is not always the case. Please join me in welcoming Bryan Gillette.
Vicki,
hey,
it is nice to be on your show. I appreciate you having me here. Great to meet you. I'm coming from San Francisco, the San Francisco Bay Area, so we're a few miles apart.
You can bike over to me.
I have biked across the United States, but I took the northerly route, came into Rhode Island, so I did not go into Georgia on that trip.
Yes, you wanted to get some of that nice lobster.
Yes. Well, it's great.
Well,
to
you
be
answered my first question, which is my icebreaker. Where do you call home? Have you always lived in that area?
So I have always lived in this area in the general area for most of my life. I'm about 45 minutes to an hour east of San Francisco in the suburbs. And so I grew up in the area in a small town not far from here, and then have called this home since, I think I moved back here in the mid 90s. So, but didn't live too far away.
Yeah, San Francisco's a beautiful place.
It's a nice place to live. In a couple hours I can be in the mountains.
Yeah.
I can be at the ocean. So I enjoy it here.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just get right into this. I'm sure everybody is waiting to learn, pick your brain, or let me pick your brain for them to hear. You interviewed 100 CXOs, so I'm sure that's the C-suite,
right,
and ultra distance athletes, which after this, I'm going to have to talk to you about that.
Yeah.
What did you learn they do well or differently than others?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that they do, and my reason for choosing that group is I had just completed the 200-mile run around Tahoe, so that's 8 marathons back to back, And I thought, what is it? How is it? People that do these things can go, cross the finish line. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
A little crazy people.
And is there any similarities between what you see on doing these types of events, the ultra distance events, versus the what you see at the executive suite and some of the executives? And so I thought, I want to find the answer to that. And I set a goal of 100 people. And about 75% of those were in the business world. And then, a little less than, about 25% were in ultra distance or something along those lines. And I found there were just tremendous similarities between some of the folks, highly focused on what they want to accomplish. And so they know what they want to accomplish, and they're very clear on why they want to do it. I had interviewed one CEO of a fairly, responsible for a fairly large board. And I said, why is it you're doing this? And he works in the economic development space in the Sacramento area, which is our state capital. And he's responsible for about 15 to 20 of the cities in the surrounding areas, and then all of the kind of the big executives in the area that is his board. And he's trying to raise up the economic development region. Wow. And I said, what is it? Why do you do that? I mean, what got you into this? And he said, when I was a kid, I saw that my dad got laid off and lost his job. And when he lost his job, he just kind of lost that will. Yeah. And I never wanted that to happen to other people. And so that's why I work so hard to kind of build up these regions. And this guy is just wicked smart. And it kind of, we've all heard that, find your why. It's that know why you're in this. And so he was clear. So, and when they set that, they get very focused. They know where to say yes, but they also know where to say no. You have to prioritize what you want to get done. You can't do everything. Yeah. One of the chief human resources officers that I interviewed, he's a CHRO for a mid-sized technology company. He is a professional. He was, for a period of time, he was a professional FIFA referee for a long period. So he refereed at the top, at the very highest parts of soccer. And then he's an Ironman. Wow. And he said, when this ties into the priorities, is when I decide I'm going to do an Ironman, he goes, I know I have to find 12 hours a week. And that's 7% of our week. And he goes, I know that I can't say yes to everything. And so I have to figure out, where am I going to find those 12 hours? So it's just that priority, very focused and very confident on what they can do. I mean, there's many other things but those are a few things that just come to the top of my head.
Yeah. And I'm sure that they don't just go about their week haphazardly. There sounds to me that there are people that, do that Sunday planning or look at their...
No, you're right, Vicki. I mean, they're very deliberate in what they do and very deliberate in what they don't do. Yeah. And so they know it's like, okay, this is the direction I'm going to go. And that's the direction I'm going to go. You think of a pilot, a pilot just doesn't take off and it's like, oh, where's the plane going to go? And so many of these people, and I'm kind of the same view, is I don't let fate drive where I'm going to go. I take control of it and decide that, okay, I'm going to go this way. I'm going to go to Roswell. And I go there. So I don't go to Tallahassee.
Yeah. And I think also, you have that destination, but when you have to pivot or change your direction to get to that end goal, but you don't just go straight on ahead. If there's a roadblock or something, don't let it stop you. You be willing to change, to be flexible.
You are, but you're hesitant to change too early because you will hit roadblocks along the way. But so many of them, the folks, they had the confidence that there are going to be roadblocks. Right. But I know when I hit that roadblock, I know that I can go around it, or I'm going to find another way to go around it. And so it's that confidence. It's that there are going to be bad days. And I know there's going to be bad days, and there's going to be things where I'm going to hear no, or I'm just going to kind of get stopped. And then I have to figure out, okay, maybe I got to go try a plan B.
That's awesome. What surprised you the most when you interviewed these executives?
Two things surprised me. One is how humble most of them were. I mean, they're no different than you and I. I mean, they have their insecurities, they have their strengths, but how humble everyone was. And I would reach out to them and ask, hey, I'm working on a book. And I interviewed these people over about 1.5 years. I said, here's what I'm doing. Would you mind if I interviewed you? And I was surprised how many people said, well, why do you want to interview me? And I would say, well, because here's what you have accomplished. And so I had to be the one coming back. It's like, well, you did this, and then you did this. And I want to learn about that. And they said, oh, okay. So that surprised me. And then the other thing that really surprised me is how few of them said no. So I was wondering, I'm going to go reach out to these people, and how many of them are going to say no to my request? So if I want to interview 100, am I going to have to ask 200 people? Yeah. I asked 102 people.
Wow.
So I spoke to more people than that, but I only 2 people said no.
Wow.
And it reinforced something that I have to kind of reinforce in my head more, is if you don't ask, the answer is no. Right. No. If you do ask, there is a greater chance the answer will be yes than if you don't ask. You might still hear no.
Not now.
But there's a greater chance you're going to hear yes if you ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that those things surprised me and I loved the interviews. I could continue to talk to these folks.
I was, whenever you were first talking about the first thing that surprised you, I wondered how many of them thought, well, how many people said no before you came to me?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer.
I could see that.
They may learn about that now.
When the chips are down, as we just said a few moments ago, happens, and your forward motion or momentum is stalled, how do leaders say, I'm going to keep going?
So many of them have that confidence in themselves, and they know that they can keep moving forward. There are a couple things that I've learned, and these are things that I've learned kind of doing ultra distance events, because eventually the chips will be down. And so many of them kind of go back and say, what is that why? Yeah. Why am I doing this? And I'll give you an example of one woman that I spoke to. She is a founder of a company called All Across Africa, based down in San Diego. But what they do is she has about 4,000 weavers, people that weave these beautiful African baskets. They're in places like Uganda or Rwanda in Africa. They weave these baskets. Those baskets are then exported into Europe and the United States. And they're beautiful products. And so she and her partners founded the company a number of years ago, and they went through Ebola. And so that they've been through 2 pandemics. I was talking to her in the middle of COVID. And so I was talking to her, and she goes, I mean, we went through Ebola, and we just always, it's like, why are we doing this? They are changing the lives of 4,000 women, where they're quadrupling their income. And so that kept her going forward. So move ahead a couple of years, and she survived. And this is a good example. It has so many things in here, and the things I experienced is when COVID hit, it was the same thing. And she realized, it's like, I've survived this before. I know I can survive it again. And you think about when you go through something challenging, it's like, okay, I've done something challenging before and I've survived it, or, I've seen other people survive it. And so, she recognized it. I survived it last time. We can survive it this time. The other thing is, so part of it is that looking at the big picture, why you're doing this.
Yeah.
And then there's another thing, and I use this in ultra distance events all the time, is focus on what do you need today? Focus on the little things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember when I was doing the Tahoe 200 and I'm 50 miles into a run, and I'm running in the middle of the night, and it's like, what do I need today right now to keep me moving forward? All right, I need to get that piece of dirt out of my shoe so it doesn't cause problems later on. So it's, what do you need this moment in order to get you moving forward? And kind of one other thing is, so many of the people I talk to have a tremendous amount of confidence in themselves, and that confidence comes from doing smaller things, other things successfully. And I read a blog post about a woman who, she wanted to ride her bike 500 miles. And she made it 325 miles, which is still impressive. Yeah, it's still, her goal was 500. And when she reached the 325, she's writing in the blog post, and she said, I thought I could only ride about 300 miles. And when I read that, what went through my head is, you didn't have the confidence you could complete your task at the beginning.
Yeah.
You failed before you started. And so many of the people I talk to, they have the confidence, they start some crazy things, but they have the confidence that, hey, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it to the finish line.
You have to visualize that.
Yeah. I mean, that's another powerful, powerful tool. I was, you talk about visualization. I was working with one woman, and she was studying for her law exam. And she had taken it 3 times before and not passed it. And I was talking to her and just asking her a couple of questions, and I could tell that her confidence was low. And I said, next time, she knew what it was like to fail the test. She could see that. And I think she was seeing that more frequently. Yeah. And I said, next time you take the test, try for the 2 weeks beforehand, as you go to bed, just to visualize walking in to take that test and looking at the first question going, oh, that's easy, and writing it. And then looking at the second question and go through, and it's like, oh yeah, I got that. That was easy. And imagine you wearing your nicest outfit that you feel so confident in. And then imagine turning that test in and just like, oh, that was, just easy. That was easy. And then 2 weeks later, when you get the results back, or however long it is, imagine, getting that envelope, opening it up, and says you passed.
Yeah.
You're seeing the failure before. Now look at, you want to be able to see what success looks like. And so many of the number of the executives I talk to, they look at where they want to go, not necessarily where they don't want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we talk to people, I teach how to be a better speaker, how to be confident in your speaking and in your leadership. And you always have that person who is nervous, that is really frozen because of that. And you talk about how it's good to be nervous. Explain to the audience why that's so important.
I know that feeling whenever, I'm giving a presentation, I too get nervous.
Yeah.
You get ready for a podcast, like, okay, do I have everything situated? An interview, and I do get nervous. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I often say it's good to be nervous is it shows you're pushing yourself. And when we push ourselves, we learn. So how are we going into that uncomfortable zone? I'm a big proponent of get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so that nervous quotient is your barometer to say, am I going far enough?
Yeah.
I was working with an executive team kind of a while back, and we were working on putting their next couple of year goals together. And we look back, kind of look back at the flip chart to see what we've got on it. And I asked them, I said, so when you guys look at this, how confident are you that you can do it? And they all kind of looked at me. It's like, yeah, I feel fairly confident. I said, do any of these make you nervous? And no, not really. And I said, well, maybe you're not thinking big enough.
Yeah.
That is the indication that you are thinking big enough. Now, there is a point, and you talk a little bit about how it can stop you.
Mm-hmm.
That's too far. And so maybe you have to back up a little bit. So if you're given a presentation to 200 people, all right, maybe you start with 10 people. How do you practice that over and over? I will tell you, when I stood at the start line of the Tahoe 200, I was nervous because I was going to spend 3, maybe 4 nights out on a trail in a remote area where there are bears.
I told you, crazy.
Yeah. And I wasn't, it's like, if I fall and something happens, it's a long way for somebody to get, chances are a helicopter is going to have to come out and get me. Yeah. And it's going to take my body and my mind into places I might not have been before. But I knew those nerves are good. And how do you kind of, how does it get you excited?
Yeah. The adrenaline.
Yeah, that adrenaline. And when I've given big presentations, I've been nervous about it. That's normal. And I think, how do you then normalize it? That most people are. I mean, one of the executives I worked with years ago, he was general manager of a very large organization. And he kind of pulled me into his office privately. He said, "Hey, Bryan, I really don't like giving presentations." And he had to give keynote presentations. He goes, "I get nervous." And so we had to talk through that and give him some tips on, how to handle that. So.
Wow. So what holds people back from taking big leaps?
Yeah. Excuses.
Yeah. By the pounds.
Fear. Fear does. What's interesting is fear and excitement physiologically are the same.
Yeah.
It's that you got that belly, the butterflies in your belly, you got sweaty palms,
heart racing.
Heart is racing. Yeah. Physiologically, they are the same. And I remember, so my wife and I took our kids out of school for a year and we traveled around the world, and we spent about 4.5 months in Africa. And we were out on an African safari, the 4 of us and our guide. And we're in this open Jeep where, just this top, but you can get in and out of the sides really easily. And we drove up to, about 20 yards from this lion. And at 20 yards, it was really cool. And it was so exciting. And we were all, it's like, this is great. And then the lion gets up and walks right toward us and is literally about 4 feet from us. And, we could put our hand out and almost touch him. He looks up at us, and my wife's heart is just racing. That was the fear. And I've got a video of this, and you can hear my wife in the background go to our guide. It's like, is this okay?
Too late now.
Yeah, it is. It's a little late. And he says, it's fine. You just stay very quiet. Well, okay. Yeah. And the lion, and so my heart is racing because of the fear. And then the lion just lays down in the shade of the Jeep.
Wow.
And it moves from this fear to this excitement. And it was just no change in physiological to our body, but just all change in the mind.
Oh, yeah.
And fear, as a friend of mine who says, he goes, fear and doubt kill more dreams than
Yes,
failure ever
absolutely.
has. Yeah. And what's interesting is fear keeps our species alive. So when you see the lion, you move away from the lion. It prevents you from jumping off the cliff. It keeps you alive.
Yeah.
But it also keeps us from moving forward when danger is relatively low. I just wrote a blog post how my wife was in, and her and my son were in a car crash, and
wow.
they're fine. The car was totaled, but we aren't generally afraid of driving. But there's a number of people that are deathly afraid or just fearful of flying.
Yeah.
And when you look at the statistics,
more people die in cars.
Yeah, I always say, when people say that, I say there's a greater chance you're going to die in the car going to your airplane than you are going to the airplane. I mean, there were a couple of years when there were no U.S. no fatalities on U.S. carriers on a major commercial airplane. A couple of years.
Yeah.
And like over a 6 or 7 year, I forget the exact numbers, there were like 60 people that have died in a commercial. So, I mean, we're afraid of the flying when that's not what we should be afraid. So it's how does fear, sometimes it needs to stop us because it keeps us alive, but also, it needs to, it can stop us when we should be moving forward. So
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I had an opportunity in 2014 to go to Kuala Lumpur for a Toastmaster convention. I was a district leader, and that was when the plane disappeared in that area.
Oh.
And I had family, friends, everyone trying to talk me out of going.
Yeah.
And I said, this is perhaps the only time I ever go to Kuala Lumpur. And it is, to me, a great opportunity. And if it's my time, it's my time.
Yeah.
And it was a fabulous opportunity.
One of the guys I interviewed, we were talking a little bit about that. And he said, often what we focus on is we focus on the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
When in reality, we should focus on the realistic worst case scenario. And this guy, he founded a company I worked for. He then ended up selling it for a couple $2 billion. He's a phenomenal skier. And so we were talking about skiing. I also interviewed his ski coach. And he said, people will often stand on top of the cornice and look down. And it's a scary when you're looking down the cornice.
Yes, it is.
And he said, the ones that get stopped are the ones that think I'm going to die. But in reality, a number of things have to occur. A number of bad things have to occur before the worst case scenario hits. It's not one thing generally that occurs. It's a number of things. But yeah, that fear is interesting. I've traveled all over the world, and I've been, I was in Turkey when there were some bombings, and I was in Europe when London was bombed, and I've been into Lebanon, and people say, "Oh, aren't you worried about a terrorist attack?" And I said, the chance of something like that happening are so slim. There's a greater chance I'm going to get hit by a car or a motorbike or some accident like that. Your chance of getting hit in a terrorist attack. And so we focus our fear sometime in irrational ways.
Yeah, exactly right. So you talked about traveling all over the world. You took a 7-month sabbatical from a high-paying, great job in the middle of your career and traveled the world.
Why?
Some people would never do that. Some people have a hard time just changing jobs.
Yeah.
What inspired you, or What provoked you?
What
to do
provoked me?
that?
So I've done it twice. I did a 7-month trip around the world in 2005. And then I did a 1 year, my wife. And I did it. She was not my wife at the time in 2005. And I knew that if we came back, we were coming back and getting married. It's a really good test.
I was going to say she passed.
Yeah, I think I passed too. We knew when we left, it's either we're coming back on separate airplanes and we're going different directions, or we're coming back and got married. And so I proposed on the Great Wall of China, and now we have 2 beautiful kids, and it's wonderful. And then we did it in 2017 with our 2 kids, and we both asked ourselves these same questions. It's not common in the United States to do something like that.
Right,
get into your 20, out of college, into your early 20s, into your 30s and your 40s, and even your 50s, and to take a break from work is not that common. For something like that. And I love to travel. And the company I was working for had just gotten acquired. And it's like, it's not going to be as exciting, and now could be a good opportunity just to go spend 7 months and kind of explore the world. And the question I asked myself is, all right, in 30 years or 20 years, will I regret not doing this? And the answer came really quickly. I mean, it's like, yeah, I will. Yeah. If for something happened, there were a number of things I was nervous about. My nervous quotient was rising up, but if something happened, I can always come back.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, what's the worst that's going to happen? There's the worst case, but realistically, what's the worst? It's like, I'm going to go out, I'm not going to enjoy it, and I'm going to come back. And I loved it. And, and we had a great time. And we then said, at the time we didn't have kids, but we knew we'd want to have kids. And so when, our second child came along, and we knew, all right, when they're in 5th and 3rd grade, we're going to take them out of school. And so we looked ahead, 12 years, and it's like, that's what we're going to do.
Nice.
So it's just that question of, will I regret not doing this in 10 years? And I have asked that when I've looked to make career moves. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they were trying whether or not to do this one big project. And they really wanted to do it, but there were some things that were holding them back.
Yeah.
And they were easily navigatable roadblocks. And he was a little bit, he was trying to talk himself into going. I said, okay, if you don't do this, will you regret it in 10 years? And he goes, yes. I said, there's your question. You got to do it. So
yeah. I had for my desk at my corporate office for a long time, I had a phone that was the result of a project that I had killed because it wasn't going to work. And it has just a quote about sitting on your rocking chair on your porch. And is this something, if you're sitting on your rocking chair, would you regret it at that time?
Right.
And that was my reminder for everything that I did from that moment on.
Yeah. I mean, there's a woman, Bronnie Ware, who wrote a book, Top Regrets of the Dying. And she was, if you've heard of that, she was not a nurse, but a home care individual. And she worked with people at the end of their life. And so she interviewed them. She got to talk to them. And one of the things she found is it wasn't the things that people did that they regretted. It was the things that people didn't do. And it's like, that's how I kind of think. It's like when I have to make big decisions. Now, there are times it's like, you got to make choices. You have to balance out priorities. And you only have limited time, limited money, and so how do you use that? And so that's where, it goes back to what we started talking about at the early on, Vicki, is, the people that I talked to, they were clear on what their priorities were. And they were willing to say no to something in order to say yes to something else.
Yeah. so many good things you pass up because you're afraid of what will people say if I do this,
Yeah, I know.
As entrepreneurs, I mean, I know that a lot of people after I left my corporate job, retired, and they just figured, oh, well, you have your little nest egg there, you're going to sit. And it was like, no. Have you not met me?
Yeah, you've got so much to offer.
It's like, no. But what if you fail? It was like, well, I'll keep trying to figure out what is better for me. I don't know. There's lots to do out there in this world. So but a lot of people hold themselves back because they're worried about what other people will think.
You're worried about what other people think. I mean, I think back to a kid as a kid, and I remember going to those dances when you're in your middle school.
Oh yeah,
and
all the boys, all the girls.
All the boys are on one side, and so I was on one side, and all the girls. And you look across the room, and it seems like it's a mile and a half to where the girls are sitting. And from it's the girls are sitting over there going, "Oh, is that guy going to come over?" And the boys are going, "It's like I am scared to death." And then you get up and you walk across, which takes an hour and a half to walk across that gym because it seems so long. And you get there and you go to ask, and if the girl says no, it's a long walk back. And I will tell you, it scared the heck out of me. But I did survive it.
Yes,
I'm a little scarred, but I did survive it. And it's like, okay, have people survived other things like that?
Yeah.
And if I don't make it, what's going to happen? My dad, when I was a kid, every year we would go skiing, and we'd go ski like to somewhere in another state, Colorado or Idaho and Utah. And I was 10 at the time. We're in Breckenridge, Colorado, and I ski down the hill and I get to the bottom. And I do this nice sliding stop, and I spray snow all over them. And in my head, I'm like this amazing skier. And my dad's probably thinking, "You're not that amazing." and I said to him, I said, "God, man, I haven't fallen all day." And I'm really proud of that. And my dad compliments me on my form. He goes, "When you're not falling, you might not be pushing yourself hard enough."
Very true.
And that every once in a while, and I look at times in my life when I probably wasn't falling enough at that time, not because I was that good, because I just wasn't pushing it far enough.
Yeah.
And so we as a society don't like failure. I don't want to fail. Right. And I will try everything possible to not fail. But how do you learn? And that's one of the things that so many of the people,
exactly it.
Yeah, and that I talked to, they had some pretty good failures. And
some good ones.
Yeah, and some of these were started up a company and it didn't work, and then they started up another one and it didn't work. And it's like, okay, I can figure it out eventually. So that's one thing that you're going to have some failures in life, and they're hard. There's no doubt about it. I don't like them, but they happen.
When I'm coaching or mentoring people that are trying to overcome the fear of speaking, one of the first things when they get through their first 4 minutes or 5 minutes, it's like, see, you didn't die.
Right.
We haven't killed anybody yet.
I haven't died yet. Yeah, no, it's hard.
Yeah, for sure. So what advice would you give your 20 or 30-year-old self now?
I was thinking, what advice would I give my 15-year-old self? And it would be, go ask the girl out.
Learn to dance.
Yeah. My wife, that's the advice my wife would give to me, is learn to dance. It's, don't be afraid to hit for the fences every once in a while.
And miss.
And miss. Yeah.
Yes.
What the guy I was talking about earlier, who, he lost his father his father lost his job. Yeah. And he goes, "I'm a home run hitter. I'm hitting for the fences." Now, I think there's a balance. You can't always be hitting for the fences, because sometimes you just have to get on base.
Yeah, it's those small wins.
Yeah, it is those small wins, but every once in a while you see an opportunity. It's like, I'm gonna risk it. So that would have been, the big thing I would tell my younger self is hit a little bit harder for the fences.
Yeah, because whenever you get it, man, it feels good.
It does. It sucks when you don't.
No, I know. I know.
When you see it, and I'm not a baseball player, but when you see it go into the fence and it's going, and then it drops down and the outfielder catches it, yeah, that sucks, because you're excited for 10 seconds, and then it's like, oh. So, yeah.
All right, it's time for rapid fire.
Okay,
fire.
Bring it on.
5 words or phrases, just whatever comes to your mind. When I say getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Oh, I'm sorry. So when you say that?
When I say that, what comes to mind? Getting comfortable for being uncomfortable.
Shoot for the fences.
Shoot for the fences. Awesome. Why should we think more strategically?
We're in such a get rich quick, lose weight fast world, and very few people get rich quick or lose weight fast.
That's right.
It takes time. It takes a lot of hard work, and so that's why if you're thinking, instead of thinking 5, 10 years out, think 10, 20 years out. But thinking 1 year out is not going to get you to that long-term goal.
And all my anti-aging products I sell, it's like 90 days. You got to give me 90 days.
Yeah.
I'll make you look 10 years younger, but you got to give me 90 days.
The only people that get rich in the get rich quick thing are the people that wrote the book on how to get rich quick.
So true.
So
managing risk. People good at that or not?
People aren't good at understanding where the real risk is. There's a number of people that are good at managing risk, and so how do you truly understand what's at risk and what will happen if that happens, and what is the likelihood of it happening? So there is a risk. Everything has risk. I'm going to get in my car and drive somewhere this evening. There is risk there.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood of it happening? And if it does, how can I minimize the impact if it does happen? That's why I put a seatbelt on. That's why I drive with a car with airbags in. My wife got hit with a car going 60 miles an hour on the freeway by a car probably 3 times the size of hers. The airbags went off and she walked out of it. So what are those seat belts? What are those airbags you have in your life to minimize any impact when the collision does occur?
Yeah. I was sitting at a traffic light and a car turned left illegally right into my car. No, it wasn't even moving.
Yeah.
And it was before airbags. Okay, yeah, I'm that old. Yeah. Okay, building resilience. Why should we tone those resilience muscles up?
It helps us to get into that nervous zone. You think about swimming is, as kids, you build your confidence and kind of get comfortable with some resilience in the shallow end of the pool. And then once you have that confidence, you move into the deep end, and it's hard, and you start to build more of that resilience.
Yeah.
But it's the resilience gets you to do things that are bigger.
Yeah.
So, think about your first job, and then think about your third job. You weren't ready for that third job that was much bigger. You were managing more people when you were at that, right out of college, or that very first job. And so it helps us, that resilience makes us stronger for the next thing that we're going to do.
Yeah.
I recorded something for the radio station here about 2.5 years ago. People were complaining about COVID and learning at home, and how it's going to impact the math and it's going to impact their reading. And one of the things I said is, Microsoft Word is going to help with that spelling now. Microsoft Excel is going to help calculate that thing. What our kids are learning today is how to deal with change, and building up their resilience. Yeah. And while I hate what's going on with COVID, there are some silver linings to
Absolutely.
it. And this is
Absolutely.
that silver lining. It builds resilience. And so it makes us stronger because we're
Mhm.
going to have to deal with something else later on. And this is going to help us get through it.
Yeah, for sure. What was the hardest part of running 8 marathons back to back?
Getting to the start line.
Oh, yes. I believe it.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, there's a couple things, but
I believe you.
yeah, getting to the start line. When it takes a year of training, of hard training, getting up at 3 a.m. and running and out in the rain to get to the start line. Whereas when you go from the start line to the finish line, you have 100 hours.
Wow.
And so, okay, 100 hours, if I'm in pain, it's going to be over in, within 100 hours.
Yeah.
So it's just that constant kind of, I know I got to keep doing this. I got to keep persevering. And so that,
I wonder how many months, years till you decided to finally do the 8, how many excuses you put in front of that before you.
So very, very few. I've not been a runner all my life. I only started running about 3 or 4 years before I did that run.
Well, that is impressive.
And I had done a lot of cycling endurance events. And so I knew how to build up to big things. And so, I did the marathon, and then the next year I did a 50, and I did some 50s. And then the following year I did a 100-mile run. And then I went and do the 200. So it was only a couple of years. I mean, as soon as I heard about it, it's like, yeah, that's cool. Let's do it.
Wow. Very impressive. Very impressive.
Thank you.
Take care of your knees.
I know. I'm back. I'm doing more biking now. But biking's really good.
Much better for your knees.
It is.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. So those of you that are listening to this, please go run quickly, get your pen and pencils. I will read his website so you can capture that. All right. So his website is https:// There's probably supposed to be a www in front of that.
Actually, I'll make it even easier. You just go to epicperformances.com.
Oh, very good. Just go to Epic, capital EPIC has to be capitalized?
It doesn't have to be capitalized, but if you go to epicperformances.com, that'll take you to the website. And
you can drop him an email too. Just say Bryan at epicperformances.com.
That's right. You connect with me with LinkedIn as well.
LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search by his name, Bryan Gillette.
Yeah, Bryan with a Y, and then
Bryan with a Y, BRYAN, Gillette, GILLETTE. Awesome. I have had a wonderful time learning about you. You shared wonderful tips, inspirational, and I think that my guests, my audiences, will definitely want to reach out to you. So please do. Check him out on social media. Let us know what you thought of this podcast, and definitely check out his book. I'm sure that the things that he shared here are just the tip of the iceberg of what you can learn from his book.
They are, and the book is on Amazon now.
Awesome.
It goes live. It's officially published, so it's in pre-order until August 16th. So it's Epic Performances: Lessons from 100 Executives and Endurance Athletes.
Well,
So,
I know I will get that. I love those kind of books. Obviously, this is why I love to do this, because I love to get into people's brains about what makes them tick and makes them such great leaders. So thank you so much for taking time to meet with me today.
thank you, Vicki. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed talking with you.
Awesome. Well, I always say, until we meet again, remember, life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Nettling signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Nettling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.